Shifting focus to the broader African market. Now, corruption is a worldwide challenge with dire consequences on resources and how it mobilized. It deepens inequality and eventually affects economic growth and development. Hence, tackling corruption is high on the agenda of the G20 Anti-Corruption Working Group. In the meantime, the 2025 Corruption Perception Index highlights Nigeria as one of the world's top 40 most corrupt nations. Ray White caught up with prominent political figure and lawyer in Nigeria, Prince Adewole Adebayo, during the country's Independence Day last week and asked him just how independent and free Nigeria is from corruption. Here's what he had to say.
Nigeria, we've not been free from corruption. We spent decades when we didn't pay attention to it. And because we didn't pay attention to it, a generation was raised believing that it was part of the culture. But we've realized that bad leadership is the worst thing that can happen to a country. But next to bad leadership is corruption, especially if the corruption becomes endemic. So now, in Nigeria, we've gone back to how we started. We've not been able to eradicate corruption, but we have been able to get a consensus that corruption is not good. And we have been building institutions like the Independent Corrupt Practices Commission, ICPC, and the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC. The Code of Conduct Bureau also governs assets ownership, asset declaration by public officials, and so many other things that we are doing to ensure that the issue of corruption is given serious priority in law enforcement. The only problem we've had is that in some occasions, the institutions that are supposed to be the guardians of the ethics, they themselves sometimes have problems, like the police. Nigerian police should have been the first primary agency to deal with corruption. On many occasions, it has had to have an external body, dealing with it, helping it in its own corruption. You will remember the case of Tafa Balogun, who was the head of the Nigerian police, Inspector General of the police. He had to be arrested by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission for corruption himself, and he was convicted and had to serve time in prison. That was bad news for the country, but the good news, a signal, is that no matter how highly placed you are, if you are corrupt, a day will come.
Right.
You will have to pay for it.
Your day will come, but it sounds like Nigeria and South Africa are going through the same things. Now, we've got our Madlanga Commission of Inquiry looking into our police minister who's been placed on special leave. They've uncovered what appears to be a web of corruption that goes right up to the police and perhaps beyond that as well. How do you deal with that? You mentioned some measures that have been put in place to deal with corruption, but how do you make sure that it doesn't become something that's ingrained in society, that people expect corruption? How do you deal with it and you finally move on and you find some sort of solution to this?
The way out is leadership by example. Because Nigerians tend to copy what trends, what works, what their leaders do. And the tragedy of corruption in Nigeria is when corruption is on display in the leadership. So that's where I'm paying attention. Once you have a president that does not aid corruption, does not condone corruption, does not cover up corruption, does not participate in corruption, and does not do corrupt politics, that is the beginning of the journey, because Nigerians tend to do what their leaders do. That is a fact. Secondly, once the leadership is not corrupt, there will be more resources to invest in infrastructure, in the economy, in employment creation. That would also make those who are poor and desperate and forced to participate in one unlawful activity or the other to have no good reason to do so. So to make it pithy and to narrow it down, it is good leadership.
Good leadership.
Anytime corruption indices go up in Nigeria, it is because the bad leadership is doing corruption. Anytime it goes down, it is because a good leadership is fighting corruption. It's all in the leadership.
Talking about that leadership then, how do you deal with that? Because if you're looking at corruption on such a grand scale, you'd be filling up prisons very quickly. Is there some sort of, I don't know, some sort of mechanism that you can use to deal with this, to say, come forward, talk to us? Possibly, you can get amnesty. I'm not saying you're going to, but come and talk to us and let's find out those syndicates. Let's track down those people responsible. In other words, what sort of mechanisms does Nigeria perhaps have to get the bad guys caught, so to speak?
Well, if I may say, the good thing in Nigeria is that the average Nigerian is not corrupt. The average Nigerian doesn't want to be corrupt. Most of the corruption is done at the highest level. So you go to any public services in Nigeria, whether it's state, federal, or local level, you will find conscientious public servants who don't want corruption. But the power is concentrated in the political leadership, and that's where the corruption takes place. And that is why in Nigeria, very quickly, once a governor leaves office, even while still at the office, Nigerians who work under them start to expose them. So for now, I don't think that amnesty is going to work in Nigeria. What's going to work is actually for justice to be done. Once justice is done, and is done quickly, and majority of those who are corrupt can't keep the proceeds of the corruption. And the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission has been doing a lot of work in that regard. The major problem we've heard is that constitutionally, for other reasons, constitutionally, the governors of a state or the governors of states or governor of a state cannot be arrested while in office.
Oh, that's a problem.
The president and the vice president cannot be arrested while in the office. The principle in Section 308 of the Constitution is to make sure that they don't get disturbed in their line of work. It's followed the American system, whereby the offenses are not statute bad. Once they leave office, then they can go and face the music.
So it's later on. Sorry, just a comment. Yes. Later on. Would you perhaps think that there has to be, once that happens, those who are found guilty of corruption, you have to make an example out of them. Lengthy prison sentences. They don't see daylight again. Because it strikes home the message that you don't do this. You're damaging your country.
Yes, we've had governors leave the government house and go to prison in Nigeria. Joshua Dariye of Plateau State was one of them. Alamesea of Bayelsa State is one of them. The former governor of Taraba State, Yame, was one of them. And there are many governors now who are undergoing investigation and some undergoing trial. Justice comes to them. But for the common man, it comes sometimes too late, because someone does corruption in year one, and he has 2 terms of governorship. So before you can invite him for investigation, it's already year 9 or year 10. Some of the witnesses are no longer fresh. Some are not around. Some of the officers have already retired and stuff like that. So that is the problem. That's the trade-off between keeping our politics clean from political prosecution, because once a governor is in office and you try to charge them to court, they can argue that it is their political opponent that is trying to disturb their work. So we have agreed in our constitution that, okay, if you do commit corruption, we will wait for you to leave office, and then we're going to deal with you.
We'll come and
so
get
those
you.
are the trade-offs that we need to do, or we've been doing, that has occasionally disappointed people when they see that, I know this guy is corrupt, but he's walking around for a decade. But that's the law.
That was corruption activist Prince Adewole Adebayo.